Moving now to the debatable agenda. The first item on the debatable agenda is an ordinance amending Chapter 102, Traffic and Vehicles, Article 1, the general article of the Code of Ordinances, Village of Park Forest, Cook and Will Counties, Illinois, by adding a new section 102-21, use of cellular telephones while operating a motor vehicle. This item has had first reading. It's been discussed at a rules meeting. It is now on the agenda for final reading. Is there a motion?
Mr. President.
Trustee Kramer.
I move we adopt this ordinance.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the ordinance at final reading. Is there any discussion? Trustee Kopachinski.
A couple of questions. First off, I plan to vote in favor of this. I did have some discussions with residents about this, and I've noticed myself that I don't like the way I'm driving sometimes when I use the phone. And I've talked to some residents, and I said, you know, I don't know if seat belts were still not required, would I be putting on a seat belt every time I got in the car? And I know sometimes the only time I put on the seat belt is because I don't want to get a ticket. And sometimes it is an inconvenience. And sometimes we need those reminders. For the public, this will mean we will not be able to compose, send, or receive text messages, talk on a phone without the use of hands-free devices, use a cell phone to browse the internet. We may use the phone for texting, talking, or other purposes if the vehicle is stationary or parked. Chief, when will you and how will you begin enforcing this? Will it be immediate tomorrow or?
No, we're going to phase this in a public education program first, and we'll do that out for the next 60 days. We already are starting to put different signs out. We'll put a couple of, like, as we do in seatbelt safety checkpoints. We've already been enforcing it in school zones now. And even before we did this, people were not supposed to be using cell phones in school zones. So, you know, when you take it out, the citation, if a citation is ever issued, it's issued in a like a parking ticket type. It's nothing that affects the driver's license or affects insurance. We're just trying to affect basically people being more aware. And I think our public education program will probably do much more than the threat of picking up a ticket here.
So we're talking roughly a 60-day promulgation period.
Sure.
Okay. Any other discussion? I do want to just make a couple of points because I think they're important to be made. I fully expect that it's just a certain amount of time where this ordinance will become a moot point because the state will establish stronger standards, as we've seen with smoking ordinances and things like that. I would, however, like to point out something that I think is very important for us to realize about this ordinance, because there are people who object to what they see as an intrusion on their personal freedoms. I can understand, perhaps, why someone would object to use of a seat belt because it's a matter of personal behavior, because by and large what happens with the seat belt is that if you're in an accident, you are injured as the driver of that vehicle. You have made that choice to put yourself into that dangerous position, and you subsequently could very seriously be injured. The requirement that you have a safety belt is basically a requirement to protect you from yourself, to force you to be safe in the operation so that you yourself will not be injured, so it protects your personal safety. This ordinance is a completely different matter, however. This is designed to protect other people. You know, the old principle of Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes is very true in this instance. My right to swing my arm ends at the tip of the next guy's nose. When someone is driving and using a cell phone or texting, they are, in fact, swinging their arm to the point of hitting other people's noses, because who generally are injured in those kinds of situations is the poor pedestrian who's trying to cross the street and thinks that he has the walk sign, and all of a sudden the vehicle comes speeding through because the individual's on the cell phone and doesn't realize that there's a sign, a light that says stop, or a sign that says stop, or something of the sort. Or children in school zones, as the chief has already pointed out. Or another existing law in the state of Illinois relates to workmen in work zones. where you're not supposed to be using cell phones. But because people do those kinds of things, the tighter we can make the enforcement across the board, from locale to locale to locale, the better we are going to be in creating a trend that eventually is going to just simply have everyone in agreement that this is something that should not be done. And all you have to do is hear one horror story of somebody who has been injured by this, and I think you begin to realize that this is not a matter of personal freedom. This is not intruding on the personal freedom of any individual. Any individual has all the freedom in the world to use their cell phone. They can text until the cows come home. They can text the cows if they want. I don't care who they text. They just shouldn't do it when they're behind the wheel of a vehicle and that vehicle is moving, because that endangers the life of other people. It's not their life. You know, they have that freedom to run into a tree if they want to. I don't advocate it, but that's their freedom. It is, except I feel sorry for the trees, too. But the reality is this ordinance is to protect the innocent people who are injured as a result of this. And I saw it again. I gave a story some weeks ago about a van that almost toppled over because the individual was was on a cell phone and all of a sudden realized she was crossing into the wrong lane. The other day, I saw a situation again, an individual going right through a stop sign, right smack through the stop sign because he was on his cell phone gabbing away and totally oblivious to what the circumstances were. So I don't see this as an intrusion on anybody's personal freedom, any more than I would see it as an intrusion on someone's personal freedom if they were walking down the street with a revolver just arbitrarily shooting in the air, because it's the same thing. This is like putting a loaded gun to the head of a poor victim, and I don't think it should be tolerated. So, you know, I think this ordinance is in the best interest of the community. So the clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Brandon.
Aye.
Dillard.
Aye.
Kopachinski.
Aye.
Kramer.
Aye.
McCray.
Aye.
O'Neill.
Aye.
Mayor Ostenberg.
Aye. And the ordinance is adopted on final reading.